Welcome back to Joyful on Lynn Street. It's been a little while since I posted a video. There's a couple that I meant to do, and I can still maybe kind of semi-do them or walk through them. As you might see, we had our little one. I was going to do a video on just a meal prep that we did for him. Not for him, I guess, for us, for his coming. And yeah, we basically, the bulk of what I wanted to do was really meats. So I had I think my mom, my Aunt Lisa, and my sister-in-law came over, and they helped me make a bunch of different marinades, and we marinated, vacuum sealed, and froze a lot of different chicken breasts. And then I canned some marinated chicken, and marinated a couple different types of marinated beef. And then I also made like a sweet pork bean burritos, and I froze those. And a couple other things, but that was the bulk of it. I did make some tortillas, but we actually went through those almost completely already. So it has been, this Sunday will be 3 weeks that this little guy has been born. But I thought I would come on here and tell you guys his birth story. I know a lot of people, either mothers, those who already have kids, or those who are expecting, enjoy watching those. I know I did a lot. Just hearing different perspectives and different things that can happen, just to even be aware and more prepared for different things. We'll see how long he stays happy here while I talk. But yeah, anyway, so I guess I'll start by telling you what our quote-unquote birth plan was, what we were, I guess, I hate using birth plan because you really cannot plan birth, right? And even this being our first, we knew that going into it, just with different friends and all the stories that we've watched and heard, different things that have happened. You cannot plan birth. But I guess I would say this was just a wish list of things that we would like to see happen and how we prepared. So we wanted a natural birth, and meaning that we wanted to try to do this unmedicated and vaginally and all that. And anyway, so I did, however, going into it, because of family history with my mom and my sisters, know that there was a likelihood of needing some intervention of some kind. So I wasn't, even though having a natural birth was my desire, I wouldn't say I was like, this has to happen this way. I was willing and, for anything that might be needed to bring this little guy. So that, because his obviously health and well-being was both of our priorities, not wanting to do something a certain way. But there were some things that we did in preparation and for this, and I do think, spoiler alert, I ended up having a C-section, but I do think that some of those things did help. I think, I guess I'll explain as I go through it. So what I did was we did follow kind of a natural birth leading up to him. So at 30 weeks, I was drinking like a quart of this pregnancy tea every day. I was doing a cervix softener, eating dates, clary sage oil, which is something you rub on your belly, and it's supposed to help induce contractions. And I did have a fair amount of Braxton Hicks and real contractions leading up to his birth. I would say pretty much 30 weeks, 32 weeks on, I had quite a bit of Braxton Hicks. And this being my first, I did have a hard time differentiating between, Braxton Hicks and actual contractions. But then when I felt contractions a little bit later, like, yeah, that's not a Braxton Hicks. But anyway, so, and I do think they helped a lot. I ended up going into labor at 41 plus 1, barely plus 1, because it was 12:30 in the morning, days, naturally. And, but backing up a little bit, I got checked. My doctors, my midwives they don't check me regularly unless I were to ask them. At 40 weeks, they did check, and I was 1 centimeter and like 70% effaced maybe. And she did tell me that my cervix was very soft. So that I contribute to maybe the stuff that I had done leading up to it. And I think I would still do a lot of that stuff again. I definitely don't think it hurt. But yeah, I had a lot of Braxton Hicks. I had a lot of contractions, even like regular contractions that they would go on for like an hour, but they never amounted to anything. So kind of got to that point like, okay, I wasn't even trusting, like, is this even real at some point? But so after 40 weeks, at the place I go, there are doctors and midwives, and you mostly see the midwives. They don't like you to go to 42 weeks, which is fine because, I mean, like, I will say the whole pregnancy, looking back, I mean, there were definitely hard things, but it was definitely not as bad as as a lot of people have had it or as it could have been. I didn't really start feeling uncomfortable physically until maybe 38 weeks, and then when 40 weeks hit, it was a whole new level of maybe just discomfort. He was a big guy. He was measuring at our last sono before I went into labor. He was measuring over 8 pounds, like 9, I think. So yeah, he's a big guy. And that was, before 40 weeks. But anyway, so at my about 40-ish week appointment, we started talking about induction and like when to schedule that. So basically they kind of got the ball rolling. So you have to call the hospital and find a day, get a room, all that stuff, and work it out. So we were in that process. And I was like, well, I might as well try to do it myself, naturally, quote unquote naturally, if we're going to have to go in anyway. So, and my husband and I have been doing all the other things, to try to stimulate, birth and everything, all the normal things, intimacy and nipple stimulation, all these things you can do, spicy foods, going for a walk. I even when I was 40 weeks, I even went for like a 4-mile walk and I did have some contractions after that, but they didn't amount to anything. So we were doing everything we could. And so last ditch effort, I tried, I made a midwife's brew. And again, I know there's differing opinions on this, so I'm not saying that anyone should do this. You need to obviously talk to your provider before you do this. I did not, probably mostly because I didn't want her to tell me not to do it. But basically, a midwife's brew it was mostly apricot juice, lemon verbena tea, and I think legit midwife's brew uses lemon verbena essential oil. Don't quote me on that. But the one recipe that I found used lemon verbena tea and just very, very concentrated. Yeah, so I brewed it like the day before and let it sit for like a day and a half. So I put that in there, apricot juice, like I said, lemon verbena tea, 2 tablespoons of almond butter, which is interesting, and then 2 tablespoons of castor oil, which everyone has heard of taking castor oil to induce labor. And I put that in my Vitamix or whatever I have. I have a bullet. That's what I got. And then just drank that. It was like, a decent amount, and you need to drink it all within like 20 minutes. And to be honest, it didn't taste that bad. I mean, it was mostly apricot juice, like I said. It didn't make me gag or anything. I didn't think it was bad at all. So I did that Friday. Yeah, it was 41 weeks on Friday. So I took it then at like 5 or 6 in the evening. And, nothing. I didn't feel anything within, subsequent hours. We just kind of had a regular evening. And I did start to have some contractions around 10:30 when I went to sleep, but nothing too terrible. And I feel like they kind of died down, or at least enough where I fell asleep for maybe an hour. I woke up at 12:30. This would have been Saturday morning, so 41 plus 1, barely, days. 12:30 with contractions. Yeah, significant contractions. They woke me up, and right off the bat, it was, boom, they were less than 5 minutes apart. They were lasting almost a minute. And again, because of the history of just having contractions that didn't amount to anything, I waited a bit. But again, intensity, I could tell that this was a little bit more legit of a thing. So about, I would say, maybe like 1:15 or closer to 1:30 in the morning, I woke Nathan up just to let him know that this was, because it'd been going on for about an hour at that point. So I was letting him know that this is what I thought this was actual real labor. And again, they were really close together, and they always tell you, what the 4-1-1 rule, if they're 4 minutes apart, lasting for a minute and an hour, you should go in. And right off the bat, we had already kind of hit that. So it was like, what do you do? kind of a thing. But anyway, so like literally a few minutes after I woke him up, and he'd been here on the couch, sleeping on the couch for the last couple of months, poor guy, because we have a really small bed. It's only a full, and between how big I was and my pregnancy pillow, we were not fitting. So I came out here and woke him up and walked back toward the bathroom, and as soon as I turned around, my water broke in the living room. Not like whoosh, like a huge waterfall, but it there was quite a bit came out, and then it kept coming as I was trying to get to the bathroom. And yeah, at this point, Nathan was up, and we're like, okay, this is obviously it. This is not, because, I'm not to like TMI, but you can, pee on yourself and not really realize that you're peeing on yourself too and think, am I water breaking? But no, you could definitely tell, I could definitely tell a difference between this and like peeing. So, yeah, so at that point we knew, it was happening, that we were going to have a baby within a day, because they tell you your water's supposed to only be broke for so long. So it was just a question at that point how long we should labor at home. I started bleeding, just the bloody show thing, and which again, not quite a bit, and this is our first, and we didn't know, okay, what's legit, what's too much, what's not enough. And contractions are really, again, just consistently, like I said, 2 minutes apart, 2 to 3 minutes apart, even less than that, either 45 seconds to over a minute long, closer to a minute, I would say. So Nathan kind of finished up. We had most of our hospital bag packed. He finished packing up just some things, his snacks and stuff, and different things for the hospital. And then at some point there, I think at around, he'd know better than I did, maybe around 4 or 4:30 in the morning, we decided just to go to the hospital. And because one nice thing I will say, because my water had broke, we knew that they wouldn't turn us away. So when we went, we'd be there until the baby was born. Regardless of how much I was dilated, because they say, I don't know, and it might differ between hospitals and providers. Like if you're 4 or 5 centimeters, you'll stay. If you're less, they'll make you go back home. And at that point, yeah, I was still just, last check, I was just a 1 still. But because they were coming so fast and boom, 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 we're like, okay, let's just go in, whatever. Water broke, we'll just start our journey here. So we went in. The drive there is not fun when you're contracting, and you feel every little bump. And we took the smoothest route we could, but again, it's just not fun. It just is what it is, right? We got there, got into the hospital, and this part went pretty smoothly, honestly. We were, again, because it was like, when we got there, it was 4:35 in the morning, and there wasn't a lot of people there. So we were able to go. We didn't go through the ER. That was one thing I didn't want to do. They tell you coming through the ER, and I've been at this particular hospital's ER, and it's just not the nicest, and I didn't want to be stuck in triage in this ER. So my brother-in-law, and my sister who work at hospitals, they said just go straight into the front desk, and they should send you straight up to the 5th floor, in our case, which is labor and delivery. And they did, thankfully, so they didn't send us to the ER. So I recommend, if they tell you to go to the ER, just go to the front desk, and you might be sent directly up to the floor that you need to go. That was nice, because that is a whole better environment. There was like nobody there except for the on-call nurse there, and whoever was checking us in. And right when we got to the hospital, contractions did start to die down a little bit, which I've heard that a lot is a thing, and that's one of the reasons why we didn't want to go to the hospital soon, because we knew that could happen. As soon as you're kind of out of your relaxed environment and somewhere else, your body can kind of like stop, that whole progression. So, but it is what it is. So things kind of died down a little bit. I was still having them, but not as consistent. And they checked me there, and I was only 1.5 at that point. So I'd only dilated 0.5 centimeter, and it was like 80% effaced. So they went ahead and put an IV in, just the I don't know what you'd call it. They didn't hook me up to anything, but they got it ready. So if I needed to be hooked up to anything, and I knew going into this that they would do that too, and I was okay with that. So again, because I was wanting a natural birth, I didn't want to be hooked up to anything. Ideally, I didn't want Pitocin. Ideally, I didn't want an epidural, and ideally, I didn't want a C-section. Okay, so, but going on. So they moved us into our labor delivery room, and things picked up. We labored naturally like that for, I think, 11 hours. And obviously things during that 11 hours picked up in intensity, kind of back to, well, beyond where it was when we were home, because things were happening fast, and yeah. And anyway, so because my water had broke, and my midwife eventually came to, they say, they don't want your water broke for, any more than 18 to 24 hours, just because there's risk of infection. And okay, so I had been laboring for 11 hours. They checked me. I was maybe a 2. So I hadn't really moved at all. I was still effaced. I was still the exact same thing. Little one here was not even -2 station, or maybe just -2 station. So he was not coming down at all. So at that point, we did talk about Pitocin with our midwife, just because, things were getting harder. But at this rate, I wasn't going to have this baby, the amount in which it was taking me to dilate, which was nil. I wasn't going to be having him in that allotted amount of time, where my water needs to, can be broken, the 18, 24 hours. So we decided to go ahead and start Pitocin for a couple of reasons. One was obviously what I just said. And, usually they say Pitocin, if they just start to give you a little bit, it can kind of just get your body into gear, and start your process a little bit fast, get your body moving faster. Like, okay, I need to get, contracting and dilating and all this stuff. So that was the hope, obviously, with that it wouldn't take a lot, and it would just start to help my body progress itself a little bit faster. And 2, because of obviously been in labor for a total of 11, I think at that point, maybe a little bit more, and nothing had happened, and things were getting intense. Like, had I kept going at that rate, and, and then we realized things can turn around and happen fast. But, again, because of my family history, I was not anticipating that. Things happening fast like that, like dilating from like a 5 to a 9 or an 8 in like a span of 20 minutes is not something that our family is necessarily known for, which doesn't mean that it couldn't happen to me, but we're just trying to be realistic and practical about it. So I didn't want also to have this super, super long labor, to be so worn out that I couldn't, that I couldn't have the strength or the energy to push at the end, and basically be completely spent and worn out. So, and my midwife agreed. She thought that was wise. So again, we went ahead with Pitocin. And if you're familiar with that, oh my goodness. If you're familiar with Pitocin, they give you, up to mils. You only can go to 20 mils of Pitocin. So, and my midwife, bless her heart, she really did a great job. She knew what Nathan and I wanted, and she did everything she could to make that happen for us, as far as being able to have this baby, naturally. So she's like, okay, we're going to start on Pitocin, and we're going to start really slow on it. So only like 1 ml every half an hour, and just barely, again, with the hope that just it would get my body moving. Like I said, we could go up to 20. So we did that. I don't know, I think it was at some point in that first round of Pitocin where we're going every half an hour. Then maybe when we got to a certain point, like is it 12 or 18 mils? I don't know. We went every 15 minutes and we upped it a mil. So I got to 20 mils of Pitocin. I was dilated at 2. Contractions were very, very bad, were intense. And she said, in certain cases, we say about 20 mils, but we can go beyond that. So, just monitoring you and everything, they decide, okay, let's try to go up to 30 mils. So already in pain, but okay, let's do this, whatever. So they started going up beyond 20, and things were very intense. Contractions were very intense. Pitocin contractions were kind of coming boom, 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 and wow, yeah, it was bad. And then we got to 24 mils, and I was just so focused on being focused and getting through contractions and the pain. I was laying on my side, Nathan was standing to me, and I was doing everything I could, to relax in between them. And I was definitely moaning at this point out, verbally, just trying to relax and because they were that intense. And when I hit 24, somewhere around there, all of a sudden, all these nurses and people just came in, and they immediately stopped the Pitocin. They got me on my side or on my back, I can't remember position, really quick, which again, that was painful because I was in the middle of contraction. And they gave me a shot. Oh no, they turned me around, they got me on my hands and knees on the bed. And then they gave me a shot really quick to completely stop contractions. His little guy's heart rate had started to plummet, and yes, he wasn't tolerating the contractions, so they stopped everything. And then he started to recover. So I don't know if they waited, and my timeline might be a little off as far as how long each of these things took, but I think they waited about a half an hour. So I did have a little bit of coming down from that, a little bit of relief there. And I think they waited a half an hour, and then they started them back up again, or started Pitocin back up again. And they started it at 12. So they didn't start back at 0. They started at 12, and we started to go again for kind of a second round of that. And we weren't actually, I don't think it was more than an hour or two we were on that round of Pitocin, and we didn't even get up to a 20, I don't think. I think it was 17 or 18, and the same thing started to happen. His heart rate started to go down. And they had checked me a couple times between here, and I think I got to a 3 by the second round of Pitocin. I'd only at a 3. And 70% effaced. I was just 70, 80% effaced, I think. I wasn't, and he was about the same station. Nothing was basically progressing at all. So another thing they did, was they put a monitor, basically kind of a wire or plastic thing, up kind of near his head, so they could monitor the intensity of these contractions to see if they were actually productive. There you go, productive contractions. Even though they were very painful, it doesn't mean they were actually doing what they need to do. So they monitored the contractions for a little while, and during this, again, they had stopped the Pitocin again, and I don't know, maybe another half an hour, and then they started it up again. So during all that, and then laboring again, things ramping up for a third time, they were monitoring the contractions, and they were where they wanted them to be, just barely, as far as being productive. But again, he was not moving at all. So we got in the midst of that third round of Pitocin. Things were, again, I keep saying again, they were intense and kind of hitting a peak again as far as just pain and everything. And that, I will say, like, that second time they dropped the Pitocin down, that's when Nathan went to go lay down for a little bit. I told him to go, get some rest, because when you come back down, I mean, it was a little bit of a relief because I wasn't experiencing contractions, because obviously they stopped everything. And then it slowly kind of goes up again. So during that slow time, like, why don't you go get some rest, because, we're about to go through this all again. And so that was nice. During that time, it was probably like, I'm pretty sure this was the third time. It was the third or second time with Pitocin, I don't remember. But it was like 1 a.m, and I was texting to my sister-in-law and a good friend of mine, which was really nice. So, they're kind of just there with me while I was laboring, while Nathan needed to get some rest. So that was really encouraging and just kind of special to have that support there from them. And anyway, just a little side thing. But so, round 3 of Pitocin, things are very intense, and they're monitoring the contractions. Midwife came in again. She checked me. Like I said, I was a 3, and a soft 3, I think she called it. And so it was kind of like one of these things, okay, what do we do now? This had been going on for a long time at this point. I was past the 24 hours of, my water had been broken for 24 hours at this point, or just even over 24 hours, I think, at this point. And they do say, I mean, like, I've heard like, even the natural course that Nathan and I watched and, followed, they're like, okay, it's really not that big a deal. They say, your water can't be broken for more than a day, but because of risk of infection, but it downplayed it quite a bit. Like, it wasn't, it basically made you feel like getting an infection was pretty rare. And I think it is. I don't think it's really common, because even my midwife there was like, we can push this a little bit, 30 hours, whatever. So like I said, it'd been over 24 hours at this point since water was broken. And I was on my third round of Pitocin. Things were intense. So we talked about, okay, one last thing we could try was getting an epidural, in the hopes that, okay, maybe it would relax my body if that's what was needed, and I could start to contract or start to dilate. And my midwife said, we can try it. She said, I don't think that's what the problem is. She thought I was doing really well with the contractions as far as like relaxing in them. She's like, I don't think that's the issue, but she's like, it's really the last thing to try before we talk about a C-section at this point. So Nathan and I were like, go ahead. And and going into, like I said, all of this, we were wanting to do this naturally, but I will say we had that in mind, okay, but at the end of the day, whatever is needed for him, for his safety, and for my safety is needed. That's fine. And every step of the way, when we decided to start Pitocin, and now here we decided to do the epidural, we both just had a piece about this. There was no doubt in our mind, like, okay, there was really nothing else we could do. We had done everything we could leading up to each of those decisions, going down that path as far as we could. The Lord just made that really clear to both of us. So there was never like, oh, I really don't want to do that. I never felt that at all. It was just like, okay, we got into our end of each road. We're like, there is nothing else we can do here. So we went ahead and did an epidural, which, wow, does that hurt? Let me tell you, I wasn't anticipating. And plus, like, I was at the height of Pitocin contractions right now, and you can't move while they're sticking these needles in here. And Nathan couldn't be in there while they're doing this. I'm assuming because I can't move, so if he would distract me or if he'd make me move, anything like that would be a liability. But so the nurse is in front of me, like, holding my hands, and this guy, and he did a good job. I mean, they give you lidocaine. I mean, I guess it helps. I don't know. And they, put the needle in the back, and I had this, like, I think this was during 3 really intense contractions. So I told them, like, okay. I'd let them know when a bad contraction was coming so he could, like, either back off or in case I were to move or something. And just trying to breathe through him as best I could and stay steady for him. But at one point when he went in with a needle, like, I got this in my inner thigh. I got this stab of, like, like a nerve pain. And I did kind of, just a little bit twitch. And he's like, you can't move. And I'm like, well, you didn't tell me I was going to get, like, this, like, nerve pain in my leg when you were, whatever. So I don't know what he hit, something or whatever. But anyway, so eventually we got that in. And, Nathan came back in and it took its effect. And, I wasn't feeling that kind of pain. You feel like the pressure, the contractions, but you don't feel, the pain. Which, again, that was a nice relief. Thankful for that break and going through everything we did leading up to that. And Nathan came in and he told me later, he was like, you were just white. And I could not stop shaking. My body was just like, I could not control my body at all. It was just shaking and shaking and shaking at that point. And apparently I didn't look very good. And they put, also, I guess one more thing and I probably should have made notes so I may have remembered things as I went through, but I was also kind of dehydrated a little bit before the epidural. I was hooked up again to all these wires, and like I said, they had put a wire up near his head, so it was coming out of me this way, and to monitor the contractions. And the nurse there, she didn't tell me not to drink anything, but she's like, because she had to come help unhook. All these things were on me in order for me to go to the bathroom. Nathan had to help me in there. And so going to the bathroom was a little bit more of a chore than just getting up and going to the bathroom. So because of that, I didn't drink as much water as I should have. So I was a little dehydrated at that point, which wasn't good. Obviously, those of you who know, it's not good to be dehydrated during labor. So they're obviously putting a lot of fluids into me too. Okay. With the epidural, they're keeping up Pitocin. At this point, Pitocin got up to 27. And again, midwife, I know there's a couple resident doctors coming in. And this, those who were on call at the time and making rounds. And these were the only, I say, doctors that I wasn't maybe happy with while we were there, and not like super bad. I understand their perspective, but my midwife was pretty adamant that I go up only 1 ml at a time, and I think at that point it was every 15 minutes they were increasing. The nurse would come in and increase my Pitocin dose. And her reason for that was because Pitocin contractions are very intense, she wanted to give me the best chance possible of having this baby naturally, to kind of slowly, hopefully my body would just do it, but it didn't. And so I appreciated that, because the doctors had told the nurse after my midwife had left, you need to up her faster, like every 2 mils. And I don't remember if she actually did, maybe once or twice. But when my midwife came around again, the nurse asked her, and she told him no. So I appreciated that. She kind of intervened there, because basically they were wanting to move things along and get me out of there faster. Which is kind of the typical doctor thing that you hear, and I don't want to villainize them in any way. I mean, I guess I get it, but I appreciated, I guess, my midwife standing up for us in that way and advocating for us. Big no, I want to keep it on 1 ml. Anyway, so yeah, she came back at this point. Doctor came back, and he took my temperature. At that point, I had like 100-degree fever. So, I mean, it was borderline a fever. You can, 100 isn't that significant, but they were obviously aware of that, a fever. I was having a fever at that point, a slight one. But it wasn't even significant enough where they were super concerned about it, I would say. At least that's the feeling that Nathan and I got. However, and I probably only had the epidural for like 3 hours. It was not that long that I had it. And I was up to 27 mils of Pitocin. And again, he was not tolerating the contractions. Even though I wasn't really feeling them as far as the intensity of the pain, he was not tolerating them. So at that point, so obviously we knew that our attempt to do an epidural to help, and I wasn't dilating. Again, I think she checked me and I was maybe a 4. That's as far as I ever got during this whole process of labor. So it wasn't doing what we thought it would do, basically. So that's when we started talking about a C-section. And again, Nathan and I, before I think we had talked about it, 2 of us, before even she came in, and we're like, at that point we were like, okay, we've done everything we can at this point, and we've been in labor for 30 hours. My water's been broken for 30 hours. And we're not seeing really any progression here. Even with all the 3 rounds of Pitocin and them going above and beyond the Pitocin that you're supposed to actually get, there's just no, yeah. Anyway, so he wasn't tolerating it. And I mean, my rep was being very nice about it, like even bringing up the word C-section, because she knew we didn't want to do that. But I mean, at this point, there was no other option that we saw. So we told him, go ahead. This is, let's just do it. This is time. Let's get him out of here. It's been 30 hours. We've tried all these things, and my body's just saying no. And they did put me in so many different positions too. I guess I neglected to, even before the epidural, because obviously I couldn't move at that point. Before the epidural, they were getting me in all these positions. And the worst one, because they were kind of at a loss too. Like, why isn't he not coming down? Maybe he's in a bad position, because the last sonogram, he was head down, he was face down. So he was where he wasn't sunny side up. He was where he needed to be. So either 1, he was caught on like my pubic bone or something, or 2, he's just too big for my frame, which is more than likely what it probably was. But so they had me in like a runner's lunge on the bed, 1 leg in front of me and 1 leg behind me, and I had to stay there for 3 contractions. And that was at the height of, pain for me. And those were the ones where I was like over the bed like this, and I was like, they were bringing me to tears a little bit. I was like, I can't. And then I had to switch to the other leg, do a runner's lunge on the other side for 3 contractions. And yeah, that was like one of the worst, like, that I remember, peaks of like pain. It was so bad. Anyway, so and again, I'm just saying that because my midwife and nurses, they did everything they could. They put me in so many positions to try to get this baby to come down. So that's why I'm saying at that point we did everything we possibly could. And okay, C-section was the last way to go. So they gave Nathan a gown. They start kind of getting me ready. It's kind of a process, getting the room ready, for operating room ready, all these things. And again, even though I'm having epidural, I don't feel good. My body is still shaking. I'm white, and a lot of that could be, and I was dehydrated, so I was just not feeling very good at all. And they finally wheel me in there, and take my temperature again, and it's up to like 103. So at that point, they realize I probably have an infection, has set in, because my water has been broke for 30 hours. And so then they obviously need to get him out. And I mean, as far, other than just having a fever, which I'm supposed my body was responding to that, I didn't feel, I guess I don't feel any other symptoms of having an infection, which I guess was a nice thing, but maybe your body is just so taxed in every other way, you just like, I don't know, what's an infection? I don't know. So they get good in there and get me all set up, with a sheet and everything, and I'm laying flat on my back, you have your arms out like this, get me all hooked up and everything. And they basically just used my epidural and pushed more drugs through it, as far as, making me numb and everything. I'm still obviously alert and awake during all this. So you feel, they check just like, can you feel this? Can you feel this? And like, I can feel the pressure of it, but not necessarily the pain of it. So they get everything ready. So they bring Nathan back in, and he sits by my head, during this whole thing. and they have a cold cloth on my head, to, obviously with the fever going. And after everything was ready, which that took a little time, but when it was ready, they had him out maybe in like 10, 15 minutes. Nathan said it didn't take long at all. And again, I felt like the pressure of the incision, but not the pain of it, and that was weird. And I did feel pain. It did hurt, though, and they told me it was going to. When they pull him out, they have to push down up here, and that pushing hurt. And again, those were things that I was not expecting. I was not expecting as much pain during the C-section as I had. And then, they pulled him out, and, we heard his cry, and that was a wonderful moment. Both Nathan and I, teared up a little bit when we heard that. And they cleaned him up, and I think Nathan went over there, maybe taking some pictures of, him cleaning him up. And while that's happening, I start to have a lot more pain all of a sudden. And my chest and my shoulders, I'm laying flat, are just on fire. And I think, and I'm saying something to them about, the pain or something, like it hurts. And I'm starting to kind of move like my upper body a little bit. And no, you can't move your shoulders. You can't, I'm in pain. I'm like, oh, it's doing the best I can to hold still. And anyway, Nathan comes back, and he's kind of holding our little guy, like right here next to me, and I kiss him, I think, and like, you feel bad. I was in so much pain. I was so out of it that, he's like, just tell me when you want me to move him, and you don't want to say as a mother, like, yeah, please just move my baby, get him out of here. I can't right now. So I just kind of let him, but eventually he did move him. I don't know if I said something or if he did. Move him. But anyway, so the doctors are, stitching me back up, taking care of all that, and Nathan's sitting, I think, over here, and I'm watching him hold Bridger, that was special to me. I was aware of that. Oh, I just said his name. This is Bridger. And that was special to me, to see that, even though I wasn't able to kind of be a part of it. That meant a lot to me, just knowing that he was taking care of him, and he was holding him, and he was talking to him, and all the things. So they're stitching me up. I'm still in quite a bit of pain, and slightly in and out of it a little bit at this point. And then they finish, and again, they're telling me to hold still, even though I'm in so much pain. And then after they're done, we go to the recovery room. And they had me propped up a little bit in there. I was still in pain, but it wasn't as bad. I was just very out of it. I was still in pain, but it wasn't, like I said, as bad. And I remember obviously putting him on my chest and like even trying to latch and all these things. And again, I was like, please just, I didn't say anything, but I'm like, you just need to get him off me. I'm like, I can't right now. I just can't right now. But I understand, it's the importance of doing that and everything. And then I remember they're about to, wheel me into, and the nurses are talking to me about, breastfeeding and like latching and stuff like that. And I don't know. I'm like, I was like, just not now, basically not now is all I was thinking in my mind. But again, they did take him off at some point, and then Nathan's holding him, taking care of him. And, at that point they're getting ready to wheel us into our room. Some little things happen. I'm sure I'm missing. I'll think of little things in here that I remember that, whatever, not super really important to the story, but little things. They get us ready to move us back to our room, and they asked me if I wanted to hold him, and I do remember I told them no. I said I don't think I can. My arm, everything was so weak. There was no physical way I could actually hold him, and as they wheeled us to our room. So again, Nathan wheeled him behind us, and I do remember as we went past like that main desk, they're like, okay, please play the lullaby. They always, at OSF, they always play a lullaby when a baby is born, which is kind of a neat thing. If you're, even when we were in the hospital, we could hear it, at different times. It's kind of just a special thing. Oh, baby's born. So they get us into our room, and then they put me down like completely flat, and then I was in so much pain. It was almost like the height of a contraction pain level, I would say. except that like contraction like comes up to a peak and then it's going to come back down, even if it's just for like this little bit. This did not. It stayed up. I was in so much pain. I was just laying there moving around, writhing, and I was pleading for these nurses to give me something. And if you know me at all, that's just not me. I'm not, I don't say a lot when I'm in pain, that much pain, especially to people I don't know, and I was begging them to give me something. Please, you have to give me something. I was saying over, please, please, please. I was in so much pain, my shoulders and my chest. And they're all like, I said, could you just prop me up? She's like, no, we can't. You just had, we can't do this. You can't give you this. You just had an epidural. I forget what they said. And so Nathan's standing there watching me in all this pain, and it's not they're not doing anything or that they can't do anything. I don't know, or they weren't taking me seriously. But he's like, at least I'm thankful that he intervened. It was like, can you get her like some ice packs for her shoulders or something? Can you do something here? And they did do that, and that helped a little bit. It just helped like either distract me or help take some of the pain away. But that went on like, I don't even know, because when you're in that much pain, like time is like, I don't know. And eventually they did prop me up, and that helped. Like there was some relief there. And the nurse left. She's like, oh yeah, I'll get you, I can give you this. I forget what she said. And she left. And then like, she didn't come back for a while. I'm like, hello. But eventually she came back. I mean, they had me elevated a little bit, so that helped. And so I asked, because Nathan, I don't know if Nathan asked me, or if I asked him, what, why am I in so much pain here right now? And why is it in my chest and my shoulders? I just had an incision down here. And she said, well, sometimes, if gas, when you make an incision, any operation, C-section, whatever, they have to pump you full of like carbon dioxide, and it's just to make you bigger so they can see what they're doing, whatever. And if that gas has no way of escaping, it can go up. And that's what causes all this pain. I'm like, well, that's good to know. I mean, like, I had no idea that was even a possibility here. And it doesn't happen to everybody, apparently, but yay me, So, yeah. It's like, okay, well, okay. So she comes back eventually and gives me something, and finally, that pain, starts to dissipate. Yeah. And then I fell asleep, and I think Nathan said I was out for maybe an hour, maybe a little over an hour, maybe not 2 hours, but anyway, I was out for a little bit. And I finally, I remember, kind of being conscious, I need to get up. I didn't want to wake up, and I don't know if Nathan was talking to me, and finally I just realized, I need to wake up. But once I was awake, so I woke up. And that's when, he put Bridger on me. Nathan handed him to me, and I held him, and that's when I really remember, being connected and holding him, for the first time in that way. I think the first time didn't count when they stuck him in the recovery room, because I was just like, please get him off of me. I was in so much pain. So yeah, it was quite a bit of a saga delivery, and it's not quite finished yet. So, because I had an infection, they started me on antibiotics, IV antibiotics, and I think maybe 2 days. I don't know. They don't do it solid. They just do it in doses over a course of 2 days maybe. But right when he was born, they drew blood, and then they did it twice. They did it right when he was born, and then just a little bit later as well. And so he was born Sunday at 10:50, I think, in the morning. And then at 2:00 in the morning on Monday, they all came into our room, and they're like, okay, that very first blood draw, he tested positive for this infection that I have. So they took him away immediately to give him an IV, get antibiotics in him. And thankfully, and it hasn't been that long, I think in the last year, where they actually had a machine in our room that we were in, where he could actually be hooked up, have his IV in our room, which was nice. So they didn't have to keep him in the nursery. He could still stay with us. I guess it hadn't been happening for that long. So they got him an IV, and they brought him back a couple hours, 2-3 hours later. And we were told at that point that he would just have to have, this antibiotic for 36 hours, basically the amount of time that I was going to be in there. And that would be okay. so, yeah. And during this, like, I mean, I'm recovering. Things are, I mean, it's a pretty rough recovery. You know, I'm having a lot of gas pain. I'm just not able, and that's one thing they ask you, they want to make sure that you do before you leave, you know, poop, whatever, or no, they want you to fart. Poop not as important. They want you to make sure you pass gas before you leave. And I just couldn't do it. I was having a lot of pain. So these two things are going on. Bridger's getting antibiotics. You know, I'm getting antibiotics. I'm trying to get my body to do something. Again, just not wanting to cooperate much at all with me the whole weekend. But oh well, that's okay. So my midwife came in, and I was at recovery. Like, I'd been there for, let's see, obviously all Sunday, Monday. Did she come in Tuesday? I'm trying to remember. Because they want you to be, if you have a C-section, you need to be in there for 48 hours, regardless. And she came in, and because recovery was going so hard for me and I haven't been able to pass gas, she's like, why don't you stay another day? Because Nathan and I had already been talking about that, and that was kind of another confirmation. She's like, stay another day. And she gave me like this apple juice, prune juice kind of mixture to help get things going. And it didn't really help a lot. I think it maybe helped some. I'm trying to remember. But they ended up having just to give me a suppository. And then that next morning, all the things. So that was a big relief. At least that had to happen that one time. It was still something I struggled with for a little while, but I could do it. That was their big thing. They needed to know that I could do that. And I felt like that next morning, what morning was that? I felt pretty good after I had done that. But then things started to kind of pile up again inside me, and I got all stopped up, and I wasn't feeling good again. But I was able to do it that once. So during this, because like I said, they took him, it would have been Monday at 2 o'clock in the morning to get an IV. And I don't remember at what point a couple doctors came in. Was it Tuesday? I think it was Tuesday. 2 doctors from the NICU came, and all of a sudden we're telling Nathan and I, like, now have they talked to you about him staying in the NICU for 10 days? And we were like, wait, what? Say what? You know, no one had said anything to us about this. So it was completely, completely out of the blue. What are you talking about 10 days? Why does he need to be? And they said, well, okay, so basically this 36-hour window of antibiotics they told us was just precaution. They we don't know if he actually has this infection, whatever. Then now they're telling us, you know, that first culture was positive for this infection. The second culture at that point, I guess they like to draw blood and they like to leave it for a while to see if anything develops and then, you know, grows or whatever. I don't know all the words. And that one wasn't quite, at this point, that second blood draw was saying negative. Okay. And it hadn't been, they like to leave it for 2 days, and it hadn't been 2 days yet. But because this first one was positive, you know, they wanted to treat this very serious, treat him basically as if he had the infection. Because if he did have it, you know, that they could be very serious if he was left untreated. Because they were calling that, initially they were calling the diagnosis of this infection 36-hour thing as like a contaminant. Like, you know, this precaution, he probably doesn't have this. It was probably contaminated because his skin wasn't cleaned very good and something to me, you know, got in it, whatever. It was a contaminated blood draw. That's what we had been told. Anyway, so I'm discharged on Wednesday. And at that point, they wheel all of us to the NICU. Nathan wheeled me, I guess. And then, yeah, that was a painful too, even the wheelchair. I tell you what, going over bumps. And then they wheeled Bridger to the NICU. And then we stayed there for the next, it wasn't 10 days because he'd already been getting the antibiotics while I was with us in our room for like 2 days. So we were in the NICU for like 8 days post, you know, all of that. And yeah, and again, that was, you know, it was a hard thing too. You know, it was hard to recover Nathan did take me home Wednesday night for me to get some sleep. I hadn't gotten really any sleep in the hospital post C-section, just because, I mean, you know how it is if you're in the hospital, if you experience that, you've got nurses coming in, they're checking you every so often, and plus he was in there, so they're coming in for him as well and checking him constantly. And I don't sleep super great anyway. I'm a pretty light sleeper. And they're poking your tummy, and you're like, and that was painful, like checking for hemorrhage. I'm like, well, I got one now. But yeah, so they're doing all those things. So it's just not a conducive environment to sleep. But anyway, so we decided that maybe I should go home that night and sleep. And I did. My mom came, so Nathan drove me home, and my mom met us here, and so she stayed with me that night, and then Nathan went back to the hospital to stay overnight with Bridger. And I did get some sleep that night. Yeah. And we were trying to, and my mom went and got us a breast pump. We're trying to, like, that was a whole other thing. I'm trying to, you know, because I wasn't able to breastfeed him, all these things, just trying to make sure he gets some breast milk. And my milk hadn't come in yet, so we're trying to encourage that. And that was another kind of thing that was going on. Because he was drinking milk pretty quick and pretty fast, wanting a lot of it, big guy here. So his birth weight, I guess I didn't tell you, he was born 8 pounds, 7 ounces. He was 21 inches long. So he's a big guy. You're a big guy. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway. So Wednesday, then Nathan came home Thursday morning-ish. Late morning, I can't remember. And we both left. He picked me up, and we went to the NICU, and we were there. And we both, the next 2 days, we just stayed there. We stayed overnight in the NICU. And there's like this little couch and like a recliner that you can use for, you know, feeding and stuff. And I mean, it wasn't the best sleeping, you know, quarters in the world, but we just basically wanted to be with him. So we would come home for just a few hours in the afternoon and then leave and stay all night with him. And then eventually there was a nurse that was like, he'd get kind of restless at night, Bridger would, and we're thinking, okay, is it better if we just leave him, you know, at night and just be here all day? And there was a nurse that came in, bless her heart, at one point when we were kind of thinking all this through, and we were both obviously tired, and just really a godsend, we felt at that time, some real wisdom she provided. She's like, and all of the nurses at the NICU were great. All of his nurses, we were really thankful for them. And we both felt very comfortable leaving him with them. They made us feel very comfortable. They were taking very good care of him. And as babies do, you know, and he had an IV, he had it in his foot. They had to move it. They had to move his poor little IV like four or five times from this foot to his hand, because they kept coming out. Or no, after 2 foot, he put it in his head and then his hand. Then they did a midline. We were told that was supposed to stay a little bit more permanent, and then they ended up having to move that into his other arm, and then he was good for the next 2 days. So poor guy, he got a lot of poked and prodded, and a lot of screaming. It was hard for us to hear all that, but he did good. He was a trooper for sure. Yeah, so thankful for that nurse for her advice. She's like, you know, why don't you guys, because we need rest too, and then you can just be here during the day. So we did that for the last few days of him being there, 2 or 3 days, or we would come home at night and sleep and then get up and go in the morning, and be there all day with him, basically. So then we brought him home. So he was born Sunday morning. Yes, Sunday morning at 10:50, and we brought him home the following Thursday. Let's see. Well, not that Thursday, but the following Thursday. So his antibiotics was over that following Wednesday, not the Wednesday of his birth week, if I can say that, but the following Wednesday. But it was over at night, and we wouldn't have been able to bring him home till super late. And we didn't think that would have been a good thing. We both would have been tired. He probably wouldn't have been settled well, and that would not have been a good night here. So we waited, and we picked him up Thursday morning and brought him home. So, yeah, so that is our story. Again, yeah, a bit of a saga, but very thankful that he's here. This is, and I didn't officially tell you, this is Bridger Allen, not Singer. And Allen after his father, his middle name, and also Nathan's papa. His middle name is Allen. So, yeah, Bridger Allen came into the world with a bang. Boom, bing, bing. Yeah, so this video's gone on a little bit longer than I thought it would, but it's kind of a long story. But I might do a different video because I know this is going to make this kind of long, but just like reflecting on things that had happened and yeah, just things we kind of learned along the way was good and interesting, and it definitely gave both of us a different perspective on some things, and really appreciate that as well, and learning too that even going through this short stint, with everything that happened with him, and like nurses and doctors were telling us different things, like we didn't know exactly what was going on until he was finally in the NICU, and even then, everyone has an opinion, nurses and doctors, but even in all of those things, they're not necessarily wrong or bad, but having to, decipher through those things, discern, okay, but still ultimately have to make the decision based on these different opinions and things. And so that was a good life lesson too, just like having, that's a thing, right? Obviously, but having to actually experience it yourself and be there and all those things. Okay. And just trust the Lord, that we're doing what's right for Bridger. And again, this can't be emphasized enough, just how much the Lord provided for us just through all this, just very clear leading. Like I said, with even the labor, when we needed to implement different things, it was very clear. Neither Nathan and I look back on it and be like, we wish we wouldn't have done that, or we wish it was how it was supposed to happen, regardless of how hard it was. The Lord gave grace, and I'm healing, and we're, like I said, this Sunday will be 3 weeks. He'll be 3 weeks, and thankful. I'm starting to feel better. I had a lot of back pain like the week after he was born, and I don't know. I have some slight back struggles I've had, but nothing like that. This was very significant. There was like a lot of back spasms. It was very painful, and there was a couple of days that, especially one day in particular, where I just cried to Nathan. It was like a week after he was born. I was just tired of being in so much pain, and God gives you grace for those things, and because it was always something. I'd feel like I'd get over something, I'd start to feel better, and then it was something else that would come and just kind of bring me down again as far as physically goes. And I know I'm being loud, but I'm feeling like I'm finally on the mend from that. I'm still maybe once a day taking something for my back, and I don't know if it's just my body was completely worn out, I'm done, and I was feeling that through my back. If it was sleeping in weird positions in the NICU room, or I even heard an epidural can sometimes cause back pain. So combination of things, whatever, maybe the gas, trying to find another way out. I don't know. Either way, know that all these things have been ordained by God, and because of that, he's also provided, the grace that we needed. He did provide, I should say, and will provide. So thankful for that. And again, we had just some really great nurses, and clear direction. The Lord used some of them to just give us some wisdom. We felt like, okay, this is some discernment here in some of our decision makings, even for us, if we're not in a good position as far as being healthy and being and recovering and rested, we're not going to be able to take care of him the way we need to as well. So just, there's that balance of obviously wanting to be there, wanting to be with him 24/7 and do everything for him. But at the same time, there are times in there, I know this isn't going to be the only time, but where you can't, and, the Lord provides other people to help and to step in when they need to. And so being, having to take a step back and allow someone else to take care of your child, and do all the things that you're wanting to do when they're first born is humbling, but it's, again, very, I guess we just more felt, I mean, I'm more thankful that we even had those people to do that, and they're people that we trusted to do that with. So, yeah, I guess, I mean, I could probably just sit here and talk for a long time of just different things that we learned and experienced. The cats don't quite know what to make of him yet. Baxter, this is Baxter. Baxter's the one, he likes to smell him. Daphne kind of stays away. She's just kind of indifferent right now. They spend a lot of time in the basement when he cries. But not right now. But overall, I mean, he's been a good baby overall. Very thankful. He's eating well. He's even on a pretty good eating schedule, and he's sleeping pretty well. He has gas. Poor little kid has gas problems too. It's our lot in life, I guess. But we're learning some different things to do, like bicycling his legs, and to kind of ease that discomfort for him. Baxter, come on now, get down. It does seem to help a bit, but anyway, like I said, I could sit here and talk a long time. I think just like rehashing in my mind all the things that we've kind of been through in the last 2.5 weeks, and but overall, I guess, thankful. I mean, if you say it, put it all in one word. Very thankful, very blessed, and hi, buddy. Yeah. He has a lot of hair. All the nurses like, look at all that hair. But anyway, so yeah, that is our story. And I'm sure, like I said, I'm leaving something out. And I'm sure if Nathan was sitting right next to me and kind of talking, he'd probably insert some things that I'm forgetting, or maybe, but I think that's the bulk of it. So sorry for the long video, but I hope it was beneficial to some people. Like I said, whenever I did watch videos, I would go and look for, positive birth stories, because they always tell you, don't listen to negative birth stories. You want to keep it, and I think there is some truth to that. Keep your mind out of a dark place when it comes to everything that could possibly go wrong in labor, because there are some significant things. But so I guess I wouldn't, when I post this video, I'm not going to classify it as a positive birth story. I don't want to scare somebody who's anticipating labor into all the things that could happened to us. But at the same time, in my mind, as I think about it, I'm definitely calling it a positive birth story, just looking back and seeing, like I said, the hand of the Lord in each way. And it was ordained, and it happened as it was ordained, and that makes it, knowing that it was in, the sovereign hands of God, makes it a very positive story for me, and very thankful. So, but yeah, our little guy is finally here, and that seems just unreal to us. He doesn't even quite seem like he's mine yet. In fact, like in the hospital when I was changing his diaper and taking care of him, and I'm talking to him, you talk about yourself in the third person, like, Mama's gonna do this for you or whatever. I said Auntie Gus. It just had not clicked in my mind that I'm the mom. He's my child. I've been an aunt like my whole life for so long. That's like my role, right? But anyway, we're just loving our time with him, and he's sleeping. But anyway, like I said, I hope this is an encouragement to somebody who would watch this, and just to, regardless, I guess my advice would be, as you anticipate, those of you who maybe haven't had a baby yet, who are anticipating that, or you're expecting, just to go into your labor or your birth plan, however you want to do it, just very open, and willing to accept different things. I mean, we're coming at this from a natural perspective, and I think you need to be careful. And this is something we knew too, and we talked about before going into labor. I think there are extremes. This is true with everything. There's always two extremes to things, and both extremes are always wrong. Right? So you've got this all natural. If you go too far down this road, I think they can tend to villainize doctors a little bit and villainize nurses. And again, there may be a couple that maybe we didn't see eye to eye on, but for the most part, our nurses were wonderful. And even the doctors, they did a really good job. And you don't want to go so far to one extreme where when something's needed, the Lord did provide and give wisdom to certain people to be able to do things, to our bodies and help us in ways that, honestly, it hasn't been that long that those things have been available, and it hasn't been that long ago where neither myself or Bridger probably would be alive right now without these things. So very thankful for that. So again, being willing to just see everything in balance here. So it's good to know these things. My tendencies, I'd like to know. I like to be kind of educated on things just so you can all know the potential things before you face them. And you can't always, there's nothing, you can't know everything before you go into, especially a situation like this. And there's nothing wrong, I don't think, with, being informed as much as you can. So you're just not, when they're telling you things, you're not like, what? You know what they're talking about. And you're not taken by surprise, I guess, in some ways. Some things, like I said, you can't help, but some things, to the best of your ability, you can know about and be like, okay, I know what you're talking about, and I'm not, that's kind of at least how I am anyway. And sometimes, to a fault, I can be too much that way. But then there's also the extreme, of not just automatically doing everything, doctor's saying, and not questioning anything or not. So again, there's two different extremes here, and I guess I would just say, be willing to be open, to different things, and ultimately what's best for you and your baby, I would say. But even over all of that, ultimately, trusting the Lord, I can't emphasize that enough. And if you are not someone who knows the Lord as your Savior, if you're not one of His children, then unfortunately that's not a peace and that's not a grace that you can experience. So I guess that would be my I don't want to say recommendation. It sounds wrong, or like my word of advice, but because that makes it sound very trivial. It makes salvation sound very trivial. But you're bringing a life into this world, and you're going to face something could be very difficult, and even life-threatening at times. There are things that still happen, and you need to take that opportunity to really think about eternity, to think about where you stand, as a sinner before God Almighty, who is in control of all these things. And because I can tell you right now, there is no way that Nathan and I would have been able to go through what we did with any of the amount of peace, any of the amount of that we had. And I do feel like overall we were pretty relaxed and peaceful through the whole thing. And again, that was just because of the Lord. It's because of what He's done and the confidence that we have in Him as being sovereign over everything. And that's not something you can have apart from salvation and apart from a personal relationship with Christ. So, and it kind of reminds me also, another thing that I would say that is important too, and maybe not just in this situation, but even though Bridger was in all of these things and he was in the NICU and there was kind of all these things going on, you still have your husband. He's still your first love here, right? You've got your child now that you're taking care of, but remembering, that your husband is still first, even in all these things, as far as priority. And I realize there's different, times where you both need to focus on your child right now, and they need to be priority, but not forgetting that too. That was a blessing to me, I think, in a really big way. I think of making, I might get all teary now, of making, I don't want to say that, of making Nathan priority was a blessing to me. During all these things, like there are little things that we did just the two of us, and just fulfilling that need that we had for each other. Not forgetting that. Not putting that aside, and I can see how, someone could easily put, their spouse's, wants and desires and needs aside, completely like focused on their child right now because they're going through something, that's hard. And in the whole scheme of things, Bridger was okay. He was in the NICU as a precaution. It was not, there are so many preemie babies that were in there, and that gives you perspective too. I think there were like over 40 when we were in there. But anyway, but keeping a priority what needs to be a priority is a blessing, I guess. I don't know if I could say it that way. And just little things, that we did. Like there was like a morning or two when we left, after we woke up here, we're going to go to the hospital, that we spent just a little bit more time together, and didn't leave maybe quite as soon as we could have. And that was important, and that's what we needed as a couple, to have that time and to just really maintain that, our relationship, that closeness, that was needed there. So then we could, retain that united and peaceful ness of what marriage is. And then even when we were there one night in particular, because we would stay until his last feeding of the day, which is usually like around 10:30, and so we would usually get home pretty late, like around 11:30 at night. And we had one times when Bridger was sleeping, we turned on a movie and just kind of had like this little date night. It was like our first, we watched Father of the Bride Part 2, which, I mean, if you're familiar with that, is like when his daughter, and then he gets pregnant, and then they also finds out his wife is pregnant, later in life, and it's just funny. So we watched that, and just being able to laugh together and relax together was huge, and it was much needed, for the two of us, again, to be able to do that together. So that's something I would say too, regardless of whatever your story is, or whatever you go through, even aside from just labor or birth, anything. And I'm trying to, in my own mind, this is why I'm saying this, to make a note of this, and I want to write it down, because I know there may be things down the road, even harder things that Nathan and I face, to really, take that to heart, to take those moments and take those times to come together, and to really just continue to cultivate our own relationship. And, regardless of whatever struggle or trial might be going on at the time, because we need each other. And, that's one of the blessings of marriage, is you don't walk through these things alone anymore. But yeah, so I'm gonna get all weepy on you guys, but postpartum, okay, plus I'm a crier anyway, so it's just life for me. But anyway, so yeah, I guess I was gonna do maybe a separate video, but I'll just put that in there too. Some things that I learned, some takeaways, and things that kind of hit me. And I know there's gonna be more as I continue to kind of think it through and process some of it. And yeah, I guess another thing would be don't be so obsessed. And again, this does not just apply to labor, but because giving birth is such a big event in life, there's a lot of things I think that people place importance on. And I have to do this, I have to experience this, I've got to XYZ. And even like with your wedding and stuff, like big events, there's always these things that people place a big importance on. If you don't experience this, then there's this big, tumult. And given some of these things, I think, mean more to others than they do maybe for some people. But again, being willing to maybe not be so sold into the fact that you have to experience all of these different things. Okay, like you can't have a wonderful wonderful birth, a wonderful experience, unless I have X, Y, and Z. That's just not true. I don't believe that, even though I'm not maybe an overly sentimental person, when it comes to experiencing these different things. I still don't believe that that's possible. I think what's more important is looking for those things that God does give you. Those special moments, that he does provide for you to latch onto those. Maybe it didn't happen this way and how I expected and how everyone said, oh, you have to experience this. Like golden hour is like like where you hold, right after the baby's born, you hold them for like an hour and that whole thing. And maybe if I had experienced that, or like if subsequent kids, if we have another little one and I do experience that, I'll realize maybe how much I would have missed that with Bridger. But again, that would be like saying that I wish it would have happened in a different way, that the Lord would have done something different, and being discontent with what he did give me, So I guess that's my point, is looking for those things that God did provide and those blessings and holding on to those, because those are your special moments. Again, it might not have looked like golden hour, it might not have looked like this and that, but for me, again, I'm gonna get weepy again. It was seeing Nathan hold him. Yeah, it was in these different times, because I was in and out maybe a little bit, but I was pretty much aware, even though when I was in pain, I was, sorry, this is gross, I know, but I don't have a Kleenex. I've got a burp rag. I guess I could use that. There we go. But I was aware, at different times, and when I was aware, looking over and seeing him hold him and taking care of him and talking to him, that was my golden hour. And honestly, I don't think I can imagine anything sweeter or better, or that would have meant more to me than seeing that. So again, just don't get so caught up in things have to happen, this way and that way, and because they did it, I missed out, or I got, whatever. It's such a lie, and it's such a deception. I think that's our tendency as humans. It's our tendency to get so caught up in having all of these things, and I even think of like a wedding, where you got to do this, you have to have that, and who says, who says that you have to have this and that, and just being willing to it's okay to have something different and to have something but it's different, but it's still so special to you, and don't let anyone tell you that it would have been better if you would have had this. Don't let somebody lie to you like that. Don't let someone start to bring those, thoughts of discontentment in your heart, and something different than the Lord had provided for you. And at the same time, though, I do want to be careful. I realize, if you have a birth that's similar to ours or even harder, there's so many different things that can go wrong. The Lord was very good to us. But, there is a trauma, I guess, if you could say that way. I don't want to be dramatic, but involved in something like that, where it does take some time to get over, and everyone's a little bit different, and how they, process things like that and handle things like that. So I don't want to downplay that either. You need to maybe talk about that to somebody, or, process that. But even be careful who you do talk about it with, and make sure, even as you tell your story, even as hard as it was or traumatic as it was to someone, that you're looking for those things. You're looking for those blessings. You're looking for those provisions from the Lord, and those are the things you need to hold on to. Those are your, your golden hours, or whatever you want to call them. I don't know. That's just the word that comes to my mind, because that's the big the word that they use when you're, for that time. But yeah. So again, don't want to go too far to extreme. There's always a balance there. You do need to recover, mentally and physically in that way, I think. And again, we're all different in how we need to do that. But just being careful as you do that, the perspective that you take. So I guess, yeah, those are the things that I think I've as I've been processing this for the last, couple weeks here, almost 3 weeks now, are the things that I'm very thankful for in this whole process, and just wanted to share those with you all. And of course, also just our family, and not just our immediate family and physical family, but our church family as well. All the prayer for the three of us and everything that went into that. I mean, we never felt alone. We never felt anything like that. We even had a friend of ours come see us at the hospital in the NICU and brought us some food, and that was just so special. And it was that day that I was like, that morning I woke up and I was crying to Nathan. I was just kind of a little bit at my end. I was in so much pain still, and it had been over a week since I'd given birth, and I was still in all this pain, and I was just tired of being in pain. And she came, she was just a brightness, and to kind of a heavy time, and just made that day so special. And I think actually, was it that day too that we had that nurse who gave us some wisdom? I don't know, but that was just a blessed day. And I could tell that people had been praying for us, and obviously seeing, how the Lord had answered these prayers by providing, wisdom and different things and his people. But anyway, so I won't drone on too much longer. I promise I'm done now. But just wanted to share that, and just, praise the Lord for his goodness and his provision, obviously, in our little Bridger man here. People ask me, because Bridger, I guess, is a pretty unique name, and they always ask me, where did you guys come up with that name? I'm sorry, this is gross, but hey, it's better than using anything else. Burp cloth. I will wash this. I won't, use this next time we feed him. But it wasn't nothing too crazy. We were just looking online. It was just a name that I found as I was doing a lot of looking online for maybe more unique names. We wanted something that wasn't traditional. We're not super traditional, neither Nathan and I are. When it comes to names, there's just so many that are good names that we like, but they're overused. Everyone uses them, or you either know someone who has that name. And it just didn't stand out. Nothing stood out to us until I saw this name. There's a couple others on our list, but boy names for us were hard. And obviously we knew we were having a boy. So yeah, I found Bridger. And so I told Nathan, he's like, that was the first one. Nathan was really I like that. I really like that. So, all right. So we kept that on our list for a while, and then ultimately that one was our favorite. We thought of all of our names. And it went with Alan, because we knew we wanted to have Alan, and Bridger, it kind of flowed with that. And, yeah. And so we'd kind of just call him that for a while, like Bridger. So he used it, just to see how we liked it. It stuck. We both just, it stuck. And he's a Bridger. So, yeah, that's where that came from. Nothing, no big story or anything crazy, just something we found and we liked. So, but he did remember, though. Nathan remembered later, which was kind of neat. I thought that there was a explorer in the 1800s named, what was it? Is it Jim Bridger? I think I have that right. And it was a story that his dad read to him when he was young. He was a Christian explorer. I think he had shortened the path for the Oregon Trail or something, did some exploring. I'm not exactly sure. That's history is Nathan's thing, not mine. I always forget all those things. But so I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat and special. So I'm like, you're going to have to read that to Bridger when he gets older, and you read him that story. So that's kind of neat. But okay, I'm done now. Me and Bridger Allen are going to chill for the rest of the afternoon. I think I have a visitor coming, so I'll need to get cleaned up. But all right, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.